We were gone for quite a while, but now we're back. Feed the Trolls is here. I was doing work things and taking a break, and then Thorin was off somewhere. But here we all are, and Yumi is with us for what was meant to be a full-on, long conversation about who was going to win the major. But then after IAM Shangdu, it was very obvious who's going to win the major, and Fallen will lift the trophy. So this is going to probably be a complete waste of time. So before we get into
here's the thing. I can see already who the two groups of people in this call are. There's two groups of people, right, who reacted differently to that information we all saw, which is before the final, there was that stat from ESL where they were like, it's been 3,000 days since Fallen was in an IEM final. You're the sort of person who went, what a legend, back in the finals. I went, what was going on in the 3,000 days, Fallen? What was going on? I'm that doc chasing after him in that meme. What was going on, Fallen? What was going on in those 3,000 days, bro? So you can see the divide there. I think we've got the framing set up.
Do you know what really upset me? Like, I actually do have bones to pick with you, Thorin, is you made a tweet before Shangdu, basically calling out fans who said Fallen taught Molodoy everything he knows. You said they were all stupid, and I was like, right. So I replied, and I was like, our Lord and Savior Fallen will win the major.
Okay.
And then I waited, and you just ignored me. And I know you don't read the replies to your tweets.
What was that supposed to do? Like, what was that? We'll have to like your tweet now or something.
I didn't need you to like it, but I wanted to get into a debate, but you just weren't. You didn't even take the bait. You just left me. Anyway, before we...
It's not impossible. They could win at least. But it's actually plausible now. I'll give you that.
We do have to... I found something, and I kind of was so horrified by what I saw that I wanted to show it to you before we started. So that we could all react. And so, I'm going to show you my screen. This was posted after... after they won, and what is it?
Right, yeah.
This was posted by ESL Counter-Strike.
Yeah.
What is
some would say technology's gone too far, some would say.
This is the type of post I expect to receive from my uncle like 10 years after it's cool.
Shit. I know, exactly.
Like the Vigil thing was cool for a minute, but this is not the right time. I don't know what the social media manager thought the reaction would be here, actually. It's just
I literally saw Dance If You Save Brazilian Counter-Strike, that video, and then the first response was Falcons, of all places, being like, there is still time to delete this AI slop. And I was like, when Falcons is calling you out for social media. But that was the Molodoy celebration. I'd love to see what they post after they win the major. Okay, let's
see. I think that more than the movie Frankenstein asks the question, should man play God? And I think the answer is conclusively no. You should just leave art however it was naturally created. There's a reason why a human would never create that art.
I have no words. I had to share it on this channel. I had to share it somewhere because I just didn't know where else.
I agree with Yumi as well. It really is like the thing that your boomer uncle sends you.
It's also just like,
check this out, but it's like a 10-year-old meme and refried as fuck,
Surely it's also just the wrong audience. Like,
I know.
The FURIA fans, or rather, the Brazilian scene has not necessarily been the most open with fruity dancing necessarily, but here we are, I guess, with this is how we pander to the fans, I suppose.
Whatever.
I was shocked, but anyway, there it is. Good job, social media man, wherever you are. Let's talk about the chances though that FURIA could actually win the major, which is funny because in May this year, when they announced this roster change and going international, that was 100% not even in the conversation. And I think we had Moses here, and he was saying like this is a mess. And I mean, look where we are now.
This is the thing. I think the conversation around Molodoy for a lot of people from the outside was, who is this guy? Why are they taking a chance? But I think for most people that were watching Tier 2 Counter-Strike, maybe Tier 3s, it was always about Grix and Molodoy. We are depraved of elite level AWPers right now. And so I think a lot of teams actually do have to make a risk. They do have to take a chance. And even if it was out of left field, I wouldn't have predicted FURIA to make this type of move. It was something that even if it didn't work, they still had an asset that they can sell on to other teams that could definitely use the upgrade in firepower that Molodoy could provide. So it was a good risk, I think, to take. It was one that was pragmatic. It either upgraded their roster or they had an asset they could sell on that the market would almost certainly have a demand for. So it's cool that it's worked out for them, but it also just reeks of just good business, I think, actually, from a lot of different angles, in my opinion. The underrated move was Jakindar, actually, because he seemed to actually help that transition very wholeheartedly.
Sure.
I mean,
go on, where are you going? Wait, you look like you want to say something. Go on.
I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to make this about Fallen, so I'll give you some time to talk before we do that.
No, here's the thing. I actually do think the Molodoi angle's the part no one could ever have foreseen. Because as you say, like, here's the problem though, mate. I haven't even seen anyone do that fraudulent thing where they pretend they knew he was this good, because nobody did. Literally, no. I bet even he didn't know he was this good. Because I agree with you, right? But let's roll back the clock. Let's say we roll back the clock to the beginning of this year, and I say these three names, like Grix, Molodoi, Jambo, maybe even throwing the Krem guy or whatever that one time might be out. If these are all in the same sort of mix, now you notice only one of them turned out to be what Molodoi is. Like, the others are nowhere close, or they're just people that have prospects, or they need another year, or maybe it's not the right team, etc. The problem is they haven't just gotten a good player with Molodoi. Like, he unironically has like pushed a whole bunch of top AWPers aside. And as far as I can tell, it's only Ziwu and Monacy that are better than him right now. Like, you could actually even argue at this last tournament, maybe he was better than Monacy. Like, he was right up there at the same sort of level. So I think that is nuts. The Kindar one's also kind of fun because that did actually just look like some outrageous check stealing angle. Like, what the fuck? You've already got Fallen, who hasn't done anything for years, and now you just sign your Kindar because he's a big name and he's available. And a few years back, he was really good. So I don't think anyone could have actually expected that it would here's the thing. He hasn't been a star player in this team, but he has been a really effective player though. And lastly, the part that I think is crazy because no one could have foreseen this. And this is actually why fans of Fallen are overselling the Fallen narrative. Fallen basically admitted to this himself when he came on Snake and Banter. The underrated part about Yakindar as well is this whole last 3 years of like, can I be an IGL type thing, have led him to the conclusion, which is an accurate conclusion, which is maybe you're just really good as a secondary caller, and maybe Fallen needed a secondary caller, and so the two of you together have sort of been able to make an unlikely marriage that's worked for both parties. So yeah, at the moment, yeah, everything looks awesome. So, by the way, to bring it all the way back, I do agree. If you'd have looked back, not only when this team was formed, but think of even the last major, when they made that bracket, they were supposed to have a chance at the final. They got bonged out immediately in the quarters. It was really disappointing. If you'd have said at any of these points in time, this team wins the last major at 2025, it would seem absolutely absurd. Whereas right now, when you consider the mess of like Spirit, can Falcons even win? Will MOUZ ever win a tournament? You could actually argue for real, this is like a top 3 or 4 team going into this major. Like, they actually should be one of the favourites. There can't be that many favourites.
I think it's insane for me, and I think Moses actually posted this. I am obviously Fallen's #1 fangirl, so I feel like this coming from me, everyone will just shut up and be like, oh, here she goes again. But I don't know if for most people, if you meet a lot of these players, especially IGL, Orping IGL specifically, their egos are quite big. It takes...
There's only about 3 in history. You're making it too obvious, but whatever. Keep going. It was a good joke. It's a good joke. Okay, I get it. Okay. Because think about it, guys. How many could she have met?
I mean, there's loads of them in Brazil, actually. So
okay,
if I just add all of them, yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
The fact that he went, okay, you know what? What's best for this team is actually for me not to AWP. Like, that is something that a lot of players won't do. There's a lot of players that are kind of like, no, this is my role.
Sure.
Like, to take, and it was, no one thought he would be good. Like, no one thought that he wouldn't be good, but everyone was kind of like, oh, Fallen on the rifle, like, how's that going to look? And yet it worked out really well. And I do think that you have to give someone a little bit of credit for saying, okay, this is in the best interests of the team. Let me do this and put the work in. And then when you look at the other parts, like Yakinda coming in as the secondary caller, which clearly works for them, giving Molodoi the space that he's now, I mean, he is undoubtedly Rookie of the Year. For me, what's exciting about this team and why I'm excited to see them at the major now is that they're playing like as a team. It looks really interesting. It's really dynamic and fun. They have really good players, but it's not the, oh my gosh, let's just hope Monacy pops off type of vibe. Like, it is a fun and exciting team to watch. And of course, we all love an underdog story. And in a way, they were the underdogs because no.
Oh, sure.
Is underdog the right term? They were the surprise, right?
I would say redemption. Redemption is also a nice angle for them because it's Yakindar, it's Fallen. You know, Kesra and Yuri looked a little shallow for the past year as well. So for a lot of it, it's like it's the fact that this ship has been turned around so dramatically alongside an exciting rookie, alongside the legacy of Fallen. Like, it's nice to have all of these culminating timelines or narratives that we can look at FURIA and just go, yeah, you know what? I am a fan again. You know, there are a lot of people that I think were really sold off on the team thinking, Quesarado and Yuri have wasted their time with this
That's
organization.
the,
But
we always were like, they've wasted their time. And now I'm like, damn, they could actually win a trophy. We were all saying like Quesarado's the one of the best players we'll never see in a grand final. And here
yeah, it was
he
a big
is.
what if.
So it's pretty exciting, but we won't make the whole episode about FURIA because no one wants that except me. Let's talk about Spirit and how badly they've fallen off. Because I think on one side you have FURIA, where we're like, what has happened? This is incredible. And then on the other side, you have the team that I would say the majority of pundits kind of expected to dominate. And now coming into this Thorin, they look, they don't look good. I was trying to think of like a nice way to say it. It looks pretty depressing, to be fair.
No, I mean, the worst thing is, it's not even just the results, which, by the way, are dreadful right now. Like, the teams they're losing to, they should never be able to. Like, they looked before, Spirit, like, they had a really nice sit floor where, like, they could only be beaten by the absolute best teams in the world. Like, now, not only has that dropped out, but even Donk himself had, like, probably the worst month of the entire year is this last month or so. Like, his game's been really off. I think the only player, as far as I can tell, who hasn't been negatively affected is just Shiro. Shiro just does Shiro things as normal. Just, he has very defensive style anyway. Everyone else in the team does look like they were affected by this, because the difference in the past was it was allowed for like Chopper to have terrible stats because he won the game. So you didn't look at that. You looked at like, right, what's he doing in the game though to help Donk and to help back in the day if he's on ticks or someone like that. The problem with the new squad now is on paper, there's not supposed to be any excuse. These are all supposed to be like skilled players, but the collective, like what happens when you merge the 5 players together at the moment is worse. And I do think as well, what's making it even more messy is because you won those 2 tournaments with Zwei initially, that's also making it like, right, well, we can't just take him straight on and then bring Magic's back or something. So I feel like right now, I have to say, it's crazy because the whole year, the worst Spirit looked was like, I don't know, 3rd best team in the world. Like, they had a pretty high, like, flaw to their game. But as of right now, not only does it look like they could absolutely bomb this major and come like right now, it looks like they could even potentially not make the playoffs. They could come like 9th or something. But even worse, it feels like after that, you're going to have to immediately sit down with these 7 fucking players on paper and figure out which 5 players actually get to be in the server for Spirit, because it doesn't feel right now like it's going to be this 5.
This is where I notice the misalignment of like fan consensus and actual team building. You know, everybody was really excited and hyped about Zwei outside of the Austin Major, so what he was doing with Namiga, and then they just thought, man, this guy should be on a better team. And there are deficit players on Spirit. It actually was logical to try and replace some of those pieces, but you had to change the roles with it. Like, there's no point giving a player that is playing lurking late round situations and making him play all of the support roles on an elite level team. We've been through this before. It's what used to happen to NA prodigies that would always come up. They'd always be given terrible positions and given no resources, and then it's like, why aren't you shooting? Why aren't you putting up the numbers? I think I'm with you. You know, the fact that they came into this season with Cologne and Blast has muddied the waters a little bit, because now that cohesion isn't there. Like, you're saying floor, but I actually think the players are almost inspired to do too much. Like, I've seen Zwei take more hard entries than I've ever really seen him do in his career, outside of the maybe 1 or 2 games we saw at the Austin Major, which were an anomaly to his playstyle. And you're seeing Tanir and Zwei actually go missing from these games very frequently as well, almost because I think they want to do moves, but it's almost leading to like Donk not being set up in the right ways now, and it's having this ripple effect to the rest of the squad, where, you know, Chopper's calling has never really been inspirationally super tactically driven, but with the pieces firepower wise, it's not supposed to be. You know, Shiro is the contingency plan, maybe Donk or Tanir actually in late rounds. Like, that's your win condition really. But yeah, the whole atmosphere in the team just looks shaken. Like, they went into last major being legitimate contenders, and now they just feel like they have no direction.
By the way, that is also what CS is like. If you are from their team and you're like, what the hell, you guys told us to do these moves. Yeah, that's who we are. We all go, yeah, great move. Shit, that move. Why have you done that? You ruined the team. That's literally just CS, boys. Come on, you've got to know that.
This was before he went a little bit crazy on social media. I feel like people don't realize that Kassad actually has some like really incredible insight sometimes. And if you have a conversation with him, I remember speaking to him once about like roster moves, and he got really angry, and he was like, we constantly just go, oh, you must just move this piece. Like, just change this person. Just do this. And he was like, you have no idea how changing one player affects so many things, because it is actually so much more than what you see in the server.
Sure.
Like, he was like, if you bring in a player that's really good, but maybe isn't very positive, and they've replaced a very positive player, that's going to change the dynamic. If you bring in someone that's very critical of other players, like, all of those things all have an impact. And I think we're seeing that with Spirit now, which is like, we all said, you should change this, you should change. Everyone's now saying you should change Chopper, right? But like, it's not working. Like, you keep changing it, and all these other little ripples are occurring. And I kind of feel like that's what's happened with Spirits. And unfortunately, when you have the best player in the world, arguably one of the best in your team, you don't get a single chance to have an excuse. No one's going to let you have an excuse if you're playing with Donk. It's just unacceptable if you're not winning, right? Which adds so much more pressure to, I think, a lot of those players that we don't even realize, which is maybe what's happening now, Thorin.
Put it this way, if I had to guess and purely speculate, because in this case I obviously have zero ability to know what they're saying in Spirit, and also I'm not fluent in fucking Russian, unsurprisingly. But if I had to guess, I would have guessed immediately one area they must have taken a hit must be comms. Like, I have to figure Magix is the guy, Yumi, where if he dies, he must comm stuff in the game and say things that fill in the gaps for, like, put it this way, I could easily believe someone like Zontix and Shiro just silent in the game. They look like that. They seem like that sort of player. So sometimes it actually reminds me of the classic original on paper HLTV forum upgrade, which was to replace Steeko on MOUZ spots back in the day with Snacks, who's a better player, right? But then everyone said within MOUZ, yeah, but we then realised Steeko did like half the comms when he died. He used to just like comm for the other people that he saw running the site, and then Snacks didn't do that because he didn't even know that was something we required of him. So there are elements like that are way more subtle than what's happening on the scoreboard or what you'd even see in a demo. I could easily believe that. And in the case, that's why the Donk one is what worries me the most. It's not even how people like Zwei and Tinair have playing, because that makes me concerned. You have fucked something up within the delicate ecosystem of Spirit, as it were.
I would actually argue that Zontix probably does provide a lot. I know I was on one of another show with you, Thorn, when I was actually trying to propose the idea that I would take Zontix today over Zwei. And I think it's mainly to do with the type of player that these guys are. Like, Zontix always been a passive, like, take minimal risks type of player, more of a, if you're going to see him do moves, it was like only on Anubis, really, where he'd actually push extremities and take timings. Zwei is someone that seemed very free-spirited on Amiga. Definitely wants to take his own timings, wants to, disregard some of the team play aspects.
It's just free. But anyway, keep going. Whatever. Keep going.
The thing is, like, if they wanted to add Tinair, it made sense. Tinair could have taken Zontix's positions, and he could have been more proactive in his spots, and that would have made so much sense. On CT sides, give Zontix all his positions, because he's good at them. But you didn't need to shift the balance. You didn't need to add several more proactive pieces, because now you almost I feel like there's almost too many cooks in the kitchen. Like,
also, I've got a proposition just to fix CS only for myself, selfishly. I propose we make it like American football. We have two different teams for offense and defense. That way, Elish can stay on FaZe. He was awesome on T side, and Zontix can stay on Spirit on CT side. They don't get to play the other side of the game. That'd be a waste of everyone's time. But only put them on those specialist sides, and then we're all fine. It's all good. No problem.
Don't take me back to like the. Yeah, I've seen this before.
Genius time. I mean, didn't they try this? Didn't it go quite badly?
Navi did it as well with Bit at first.
True.
He was the overpass specialist, and then he ended up just being Rookie of the Year. So
true.
Yeah, it's just odd, and I know the situation with Zontix is like not necessarily Spirit's choice. But
yeah, we also don't know if he like self-benched, etc. That's still up in the air itself. Yeah, absolutely.
So it does feel like they just need someone to effectively play the support roles good. And then you could actually focus on the two prongs of Tinair and Donk as your sort of openers and win conditions. Then Shiro can actually do what he does best as well. Because he's had it. The thing is, Shiro is having a sensational year, regardless of whether you see Donk in these elite level tournaments having 0.1 rating lower than his 0.3 average. Shiro is having an exceptional year. And he is being active. He is finding openers. He's doing the most that we've seen Shiro do in his career. And the results just aren't there to reflect this in the season.
Do you think they have a chance? I mean, there's always a chance of winning the major. Like, anyone who's there has a chance. But realistically, based on what we've seen, do you think that this is a team that's going to contend for the title? Because I feel like the attitude... Oh, this is my favorite when analysts use the term vibes. But I do think that the vibes are off here. Like, it doesn't feel right.
Well, the problem I have is this. I did think, actually, before I ever saw the Tanir roster play, the other way around, I thought, actually, this is a piece where you look at what he did in Heroic, and if you can just replicate that, I think they immediately just win everything. Like, wouldn't they be unstoppable? If Donk's doing normal Donk things, then you add Tanir in, like, especially the T side, you'd be so powerful. That hasn't manifested at all, by the way. Like, actually, Tanir's been off his game. If anything, Spirit's just degraded since he joined the roster. So the problem is, I have to say, I know what you mean. Like, this is the one time ever where I actually don't sort of feel like, yeah, but they've got Donk like that. Right now, they don't. The joke is right now, they don't have the real Donk. Whatever's happened to Donk's throwing him off. So the problem is, in the past majors, even though on paper they were never the number one favorite, it was always supposed to be like Vitality. I don't know, you could even send people like G2 last year if you go back to the Shanghai one. But at the same time, you always felt like the one thing you had going for you is, even if you lack a bit of firepower, they always looked like a cohesive team, though, Spirit. Like, that's why then it was just unfair that Donk had to do all the fragging. The problem right now is, I feel like the comfort in the team seems really off. So that makes me actually have a really hard time seeing them getting through like a hard match or having some nightmare quarterfinals. Think about when they had made the run at Shanghai. Like, they were supposed to lose to MOUZ in that, but they hung in the game. I would have to say, I'm with you. As of right now, this would be a team where the stock's going way down for me. Like, I could also see this team just make the playoffs and just go immediately out.
I want to be with you, but I see how good the players like potentially can be. Like, Shiro is exceptional this year. Donk is good. Not maybe as good as his debut year, but he's pretty damn good. And if Tanir just gets it sorted somehow, like, this is the one team that I can see going into the major as a legitimate dark horse. Like, even though they've won tournaments this season, they've been a good team overall this year. If they figure it out, it is the team I expect to have the biggest rise at the major based on where we see them currently in the season. Because I think most people pull them out of the top 5 conversation. Maybe even put teams like Aurora. I think it's a legitimate argument for teams like I think it's a legitimate argument
they've all been doing better than recently, mate. Yeah, why not?
Just in terms of like what we can tangibly see for winning plays, especially when you consider Spirit. Listen, at the Shanghai Major, Magic's had a life series in the final.
Yeah,
legitimately never before seen and never seen afterwards either. Without that, they don't win that major. You know, Shiro was missing in that final.
Yeah.
Donk was basically the only one that showed up in a meaningful way, and Zontic was okay. You know, they're the only team where if I'm thinking about them in a final for the major, I actually am expecting Shiro to struggle, because honestly, it's a reputation that he's had even from his Gambit youngster days when they were in online finals. He was actually sometimes just go completely absent. So I don't think it's something that he is legitimately past. They need the riflers to really be present, and if Tanir figures it out, if there's another weapon legitimately on Spirit, they can win.
Okay, so let's move on to the team that would be the dark horse usually. And I don't even think in the last few months I wouldn't even call them a dark horse. I'd say that they were a real contender. Ironically, this is something that a lot of people wanted us to do an entire episode on.
I was going to say the word in a minute, the trigger word for every CS fan. It's going to be Falcons, isn't it? Is that what we're going?
No, it's not, actually.
What?
I'm not going with Falcons yet.
Nani?
So everyone wanted this conversation, but the problem is no one has any insight. So it wasn't a conversation that we could do for an entire hour, because I guarantee, unless Duncan and I could find some Mongolian expert who can speak English.
Oh, Mongolz,
but it was obviously the Mongolz. But then the Senzu benching happened, and that was kind of the conversation everyone wanted to have. But it does put them in a very different position now, coming into the major, from being contenders to, I mean, I would argue a giant question mark as to what we can expect. I mean, are they contenders now?
Here's the problem. I'll tell you how you know they aren't. Because instead of just people being like, oh, the controllers guy isn't bad, but still going to be hard, everyone coped so hard that they just didn't lose to every single team they played. Like, not that they beat like a good team. No. Everyone you can tell did think, oh, they're going to be way worse without Senzu. In fact, they're probably going to lose to literally almost anyone you line them up against. So how much people overreacted tells me you all thought the same thing I did, which is like, they're fucking fucked. The teams just had the soul torn out of it, because unfortunately, even though, they were a team with like really nice team play and some interesting aspects to how they played the different maps, the star piece was Senzu, unfortunately. Like, that was, look, obviously not on the same scale, but that was was Yordong. That was the player that, like, first things first, if you want Mongolz to win a tournament, you'd be like, right, Senzu be one of the best players in the tournament, be one of the best players on Mongolz, perform in the plus, then you'd go to the other check marks. So the controllers guy seems all right as a stand-in. It's not probably better than expected, but I don't know how you can look at that team and think, even with other teams having their own problems, I don't know how you can look at that team and be like, this team will be in the top 4 of the major. Like, I just don't think they will be, personally.
The way they performed at Chengdu was not akin to Mongolz. Like, they didn't play the way that the Mongolz typically play. It was very puggy. It was very all over the place, super loads amounts of chaos. And to be honest, that's the environment controllers kind of comes from in Asian Counter-Strike. That's exactly the types of scenarios I used to see him perform well in with the Chinggis Warriors. So, to be honest, it wasn't really it was surprising to see how well controllers was doing, but it was more surprising that Mongolz were winning in the fashion that they were, because they weren't tactically outmaneuvering pieces. Blitz wasn't doing particularly well. 9-10 was probably the most consistent looking piece, but he actually has been good this year as well. It's just odd. And I think I want to just attribute it to, it was a last minute stand-in. They have zero time to practice.
Yeah,
They're also a team that have been apparently prioritizing time at home, especially during the hectic schedule. So that's what I would like to say. But
by the way, that even makes sense in itself. They were in a million semis, etc. this year. I'm sure they're way more burned out than any past year. Makes sense.
But I just want them to look slightly. I want to see them look better for Hong Kong. If I'm going to see any sort of reflection, or if I'm going to see them do well at the major, there needs to be an upward trend in just the structure of the team, because it does look all over the place right now.
I also think from a mental standpoint, and again, we don't, from what I've tried, I don't know, I've tried to look into it. We don't really have any insight into what happened. I don't believe this was a move anyone wanted to make so close to the major, right? Is benching this player. So I presume it wasn't an in-server issue. I'm presuming it had something to do with whatever was going on outside the server. And I don't imagine the effect on the other players is very good. Like, I think it could put you in quite a difficult space as a competitor coming into the major, which is now a whole other thing you have to deal with, because you're bringing in a new player. You have limited time to make it work. And then you've got a bunch of players going, well, shit, this is not good for us. That is a whole different thing to deal with.
Yeah, I think I saw like a post that was like a translated Telegram piece of Senzu basically saying that it was like a personal thing, that he wanted to step away for personal reasons. And we have to remember, this guy's 19 years old.
Yep.
He's the star lightning rod of the Mongolz. He's someone that has also come into a lot of money in the esports relatively to Mongolian average wages, and he's at a key inflection point in his life where he could either prioritize Counter-Strike or he could prioritize things in his life. And whether or not we want to respect the human element or just think, oh, well, think about the career he could have had if he just knuckled down and only did this one thing. Not everyone is going to be built that same way. So I think, as much as people want the Mongolz to do well, and they were really, really rising, and this is a key sort of momentum point for the organization, I do have to have a bit of sympathy for just like the human side of things, because this is the most intense the Counter-Strike calendar has been. For the Mongolz, if they were in the closed market system with franchise leagues and they were committing to those tournaments and having decent amounts of time off, I could see it being as a more warranted criticism for him to take that step away. But this has been a taxing year for, I think, a lot of teams in the top 5, especially, because not a lot of them are picking and choosing. They are attending as many as they humanly can go to.
Yeah, by the way, I would just say this. If you look at the totality of what was said about Senzu from people associated with the Mongolz, the actual conclusion at the end, which is sad because I feel like you could have just led with this and had no vagary and no weird drama, because it started with a complete vacuum of he's just not in the team anymore, guys, but we're not going to say why. And then he's not going to say why. And we're just going to continue on that's not a big deal. That made everyone think, holy fuck, it must be something really bad. Shit, has he done something? That's why the mad thing was people were trying to bring up the old shit from NKT of oh my god, is it some gambling thing? Did he have some sort of problem with his lifestyle? I mean, the maddest one, we won't go into this, but yeah, I saw you saw that one where someone even made some mad pop culture allusion which had no business ever being referenced, because there wasn't even a hint that he was involved with anything like that outside of the server. That's why I even DM'd you holy shit, why you say that? But anyway, the point is people were just speculating anything, because whenever there's a vacuum of information, people will rush to fill that with guesses, right? I will just say this. If you actually look at all the things that came out, one of the things I think you're referring to is, I don't think it was actually him. I think it was someone associated with him, like a mate of the team or something, or some other Mongolian player. I saw there was someone made a post, which to me looked like it explained it. What they basically said was something like that it's actually for real. He himself has benched himself, and that it's implied something like burnout or the stress of the game or something in his life, which, by the way, isn't actually as out of nowhere as you might think, because here's two things to bring up. One, until literally something like 3 or 4 months ago, he was a serial choker. He had a lot of pressure on himself, and every time they would fail in the playoffs, the first thing we all said, because he's the star player, is, where the fuck was he? And you would look at his stats and you'd go, what the fuck? So I've no doubt the build-up has been crazy, because I'm sorry, even though like last year they were just a team that'd be locking him at the playoffs, once you're in every playoffs like this year, the pressure will build, and all that, like, as much as you might like all those fans from Mongolia watching you live and stuff, that's a lot of pressure too for a young guy. And then secondly, I don't know if you remember this, earlier sometime this year, I know because I replied to this tweet, he made some weird tweet where it was like, there was something about like Donk or something like, and maybe like Donk won an award or Donk had a mega MVP, and he, maybe it was after the Shanghai Major, and I just remember that Senzu himself did a post, like a tweet where it was something like, I wish I was him or something, or some weird angle where he almost sounded like a little bit bittersweet, like commenting on this, as though he actually wishes his career was something different. So to me, I actually have to say, my final conclusion, based on the fact people haven't said anything, is that actually, even though they don't know this, they made it seem like it could be way worse. It seems to me actually like it's totally plausible. He just had some sort of issue himself, and he's just decided to take himself off the game board, as it were. Maybe he can come back next year, or maybe he needs a few months to check his out. But the problem is, I do feel like they've lost so much. Like, it's not just the numbers. The other thing about this team was they actually did seem like they had really like cohesive style. Everyone like vibed on the team. Those things are real factors. I know they're intangibles, but it seemed like it was real.
That will come from playing 2.5 years together. That's, the core of the roster. For longer in just Blitz and Techno. But every other piece over the past 2 years has developed a lot. They all had things to grow and
don't you think it's one of the biggest bombers though of the entire year, bro? Like, I can't even think of anything that's as bad as this. Like, this is terrible, because you really took a team that I think everyone enjoyed watching playing, and by the way was at their absolute peak. They were actually really good. Like, if anything, them making the final, like I said on that episode of Steel, them making the final of the last major was a fluke. Like, no one thought that. This time they could actually like justifiably have been in the final of the semi-finals, and that would be like actually what should happen on paper. And sadly, that just gets ripped out. And now not only will we never know, but let's hope that he can come back next year and be really good. Because if that's just a question mark forever, this is him walking away, that'd be a real bummer for the whole like story of the Mongolz.
That for me was like the big thing, is if you looked at it, like there was this alternative world where you had the Mongolz and how incredible their rise had been coming into this. You had FURIA with the sudden like change up. You had MOUZ kind of sitting in the wings and going, oh, this could be. And then you had the superstars of like the Vitalities and the Falcons coming in, and I loved the whole story that we were bringing to the major. And I felt like when this Mongolz news came out, and now after seeing them play, suddenly that story falls away. And for me, because I'm a little bit soft-hearted and silly, like those are my favorite stories. This rise, traveling Europe together, living in the room together for 2.5 years. I mean, we saw in their vlogs like how crap their accommodation was. Grinding it out to be here. Like, they made the major final.
I think they have one last year. I think it was last year. They did a tweet. I think it was like fucking Mazzinho. They had a post where he said something mad like, we can't do a boot camp because we don't have any money. And you're like, what? You've already been up, because that's just how much it lags to get paid by TOs. No, like they're not a team that even still, like, they probably only just got to the money now, I imagine.
Well, that was the thing, right? Yeah, I mean, Yumi, that was their story, and this is not the way I want that story to end.
Yeah, especially if they're going to be effectively backed by the government in Mongolia as well. That's where I think the money has maybe solidified for them in terms of what they can finance for boot camps and all that time away. But yeah, I just have to sympathize with with professionals this year, especially because I have fatigue watching all the events sometimes, let alone attending and playing all of them, and being away from home all that time as well. We put so much focus, and I think there is always a conversation about mental health. But when players action it, it's almost met with more criticism, right, as well. So it's a strange position to be in. But I have to always remind myself as well that this is a young kid that is at a key point potentially in his career, but maybe it takes a few months, maybe a year away,
Yes.
and he comes back better after the fact. You know, we're looking at controllers subbing into a roster at 28 years old and putting up numbers. A player that is proven to do it while young, I expect to be able to do it for years to come as well.
We're talking about money there at the end, so we might as well have this conversation. This is like the most, my understanding is coming into this in the last 6 months, the most teams coming in with trophies, right? Because I think you've got Legacy, you've got FURIA, you have the Mongolz, you have Aurora, you have Vitality, you even have G2. The team that isn't coming in with a trophy is Falcons. And I know everyone loves to meme on them, but they have had deep runs. Like their time is surely coming. Or do they need just one more star player? Do we have to wait to next year? Like, what is the Falcons' chances of winning the major? I guess
they are they're a contender. They don't have trophies. The only trophy they've won this year was with Dexter of all people, and I think Maiden.
See, I don't count that because they got rid of Dexter.
Yeah.
True.
And
True.
I think wasn't Major still the roster at the
he was
time
still
as well?
there. Yep.
Yeah, so it's not with this new roster, but they have still made finals. You know, Melbourne was one. They make Pro League finals. They're making third, fourth at some of these tournaments as well. You know, it's not too dissimilar a position that I would place MOUZ, but with far more firepower and actually I think higher capabilities to perform in those types of environments. Actually, I would argue the Falcons have not only more tenure and veterancy, but you know, big game players. That's really what I'm looking for.
They need one more, Yumi. Just one more.
Yeah, I don't think so.
That was sarcasm. That was sarcasm.
I hate that the conversation is now shifted to, well, why don't we just make Nico in-game lead and replace Kixon or replace Tessus?
By the way, when that's even implied, I want to go. Then why did we sign you in the first place, Nico, not as the Agile? You know, like what were we doing? That sounds like it's fixing your role, bro. What are we doing here? What is this?
It's also just astounding to me that through all the in-game leaders that Nico has worked with, Alexi B, Hooksy, Snacks,
Carrigan,
never have I looked at any of those teams and thought, man, they're tactically excellent. They make all the right reads. They have the best executes. I've never once thought that they have had an exceptional part of their game that makes them a cut above, aside from the caliber of their players.
This is something I thought about yesterday, literally, when everyone was flaming them for like failing again. Because you know the modern thing, by the way, it's the totally legit flame. It's just people exaggerate as usual. You know the modern way you flame Falcons is every tournament, it feels like they have one of those ones where you can just do a radar screenshot and the screenshot's like, how the fuck did you lose that round? And they've done that like one of those every tournament, right? So essentially what we're getting at is the dreaded steal, like where the fundamentals argument, right, that everyone hates to have. The reason why the Falcons one is legit is because what you're saying, Yumi, that's not a Falcons problem. As far as I can tell, that's a Nico team problem. Like, you can go back to basically after Carrigan got kicked out of FaZe. I know what you mean. Every team Nico ever plays for, he's fucking awesome, by the way, and makes all amazing mid-round reads. But it feels like everyone else just plays basic CS. You know what I mean? Like the most, like, face-it pog level shit. Because I know what you mean. Like, tell me one team ever that Nico played for that was tactically excellent. Does it exist? I think you are right, mate. It's never existed. As far as I can tell, the joke would be if he was a football player, he would be the guy that just plays 4-4-2 and says, kick it up the front and I'll score the goal. Like, I would just play the most basic football ever. He'd never have any, like, fucking advanced system. What do you think on this?
Essentially, it's my inkling to this always stemmed from actually when I think Alexi B first joined G2, because I saw Alexi B's DNA over their games for like the first month. It felt like there was a real buy-in to, okay, we'll do Alexi once. And then after that month, it was just gone. It was dead. It was like, I would, from the times where I would see Nico always hard swing connector on Mirage, when under Alexi B, he was now taking ramp space and, you know, doing the whole push and pull dynamic on bomb sites. And it just seemed like he hated that, I think. And eventually these in-game leaders have been usurped, and I think actually dulled down, because also Hooksy, when he's on G2, they don't play Hooksy style Counter-Strike. No. That's more reflective on current Astralis than we ever saw on G2. And so the signs have kind of been there. And I think it was also evident that Nico was also calling a lot on CT sides. I think that's always been something that he likes to do. And I think that just calls into other areas of the game as well. I think it fights his intuitive understanding of the game. I think he's one of those players that is exceptional at what he does, but may not actually be able to inflect that on the rest of the team in a meaningful way outside of how good he performs, actually.
See, the problem isn't that he just always chalks, it's that he can't swallow his pride. So I did that. It's a different type of chalking hazard.
Oh, dear.
Is Nico one of the greatest players we've ever seen to never lift a major trophy? Is that going to be a
I mean, the joke is he's probably the greatest, isn't he? That's what's so outrageous about it. Like, that's why I even made a little video like that at the end of CSGO, where the point I made was, we're at the point now where, because so many people have won majors, that actually undersells him to even say he's the greatest to not have won. Like, he's actually greater than most of the ones that did win the major. That's what's so outrageous about that one piece of trivia being that's the one trophy he can ever win. It's even, I think it's made even worse by the Huxley era, where they won the other prestige tournaments. Like, if in theory, winning Katowice and Cologne it's harder than the major if you look at the format. But bizarrely at the majors, there is something goes wrong. Feels like 70% of the time now.
Ironically, the only in-game leader I could actually see leading Falcons legitimately might actually be Karrigan. Like, if we're talking about in-game leaders that allow their players off the leash and can play like a adaptive sort of style, he's the guy, even if his calling hasn't looked the best with FaZe for a while.
By the way, here's what's sad. I actually feel like I have no way to evaluate Kixon's IGLing in this team, YouM3. Like, I had a chance in Heroic because I knew what some of those pieces were like, and I could see some things he was doing with Saw, In this team, I feel like he is literally, it's actually comparable to what you were just saying about Huxley. I feel like he's just painted into a corner, mate. Like, if he actually has too much say and then they lose, then it's his fault. And if he doesn't, well, you'd be a fool not to just let all these star players do whatever the fuck they want. So it's like, so then he won't get any credit. So I actually don't really know how you win if you're that guy. Like, you just have to actually hope they carry you to the tournament.
I almost forgot about Snappy as well.
True.
Yeah. It is kind of funny how when Falcons came on the scene and basically went, you know what we're going to do? We're going to throw so much money and build the super team. And no matter what they do, they're just not winning the trophy. I don't know. We always talk, like, even this team, we were like, okay, now that Manasi's there, this is it, like, unstoppable run, here it comes. And yet, for some reason, it's almost like the lineups the team, the organization is a bit cursed. But
that's what's so bizarre about this squad, though, because this squad really does only have, like, it's like a binary setting. They either just smash everyone 2-0 and all the stars turn up, and it looks like exactly what Zonic must have dreamed when he got that fucking KSUK deal done. Like I'm not trolling. He must have actually for real done like a high five with someone and popped the champagne cork when he did that deal. Because I'll bet he thought it was going to be like this, where you just run over people. The problem is the other setting. There's no it's not a scale, it's just a hard setting. The other setting is that when they break, they are so fragile that at the end of the game, they can lose to anyone. Anyone really good, you have to be really good at this point in time, but anyone really good can get them at the end. That's why every semi, bet your house on the other team, unfortunately.
Anyway, let's see how the major run happens for them, and then we can all guess who is going to be.
By the way, that will melt the internet. If somehow Falcons actually trip over and win the motherfucking major, holy shit. Because at the moment, you notice, like, we're almost like getting people to like sit down and go, listen, this is true. Falcons are making all the semis. They could win the major. But the idea of them actually winning it, I can't even imagine Twitter that day if they actually won the major. And it's not that implausible. Like, I have to say, they would be a top 3 or top 4 team.
They definitely are. Like, there's only maybe 4 or 5 teams you'd shortlist to win this major.
Like, I do low-key think it would have to be, like, we're saying, like, Modesty super carry performance and people just, maybe front-run the game so you don't get into the close rounds, etc. So none of these failures can happen. But even so, like, you have to actually account for it as a possibility. It's not as much of a meme as it was in the past.
I think if they get into the final and all those pieces activate, they're terrifying. And then it gets really exciting. But I just don't know if they're going to make the final. That's the thing. We need to move on to a team who is making finals, but also struggling somewhat. Vitality, back-to-back majors. I mean, is it a possibility with what we're looking at? And they're sort of, I want to say drop in form. Would you say it was a drop in form in the last 6 months, or do you think some of the other teams just kind of rose to the occasion, YouM3?
I would say that they rose to the occasion. I mean, the final that we saw from them against G2 and the final that we saw against FURIA as well, both of them have real DNA of, finding a gap or finding a weakness. I think there's a lot of evidence to support that, Vitality have maybe been playing a replicatable game for quite some time this year, and the analysts behind the scenes have done an exceptional job of finding a gap or a weakness. And I think it was always going to happen at a certain point. This is also the problem with teams going from event to event to event, is that they don't actually update their strat book. They don't have time to reflect on those weaknesses. They push past all the close losses and just keep on going into the next series. So I do think that there is room to grow for Vitality, because I think that the other teams have caught up, and they're not only finding some of those gaps, but they're also getting some of the player output that has let some of these teams down in the past. Because Vitality right now are being kind of strung up by duct tape and super glue with all the force buy wins that they win in series, and sometimes just topple the whole game because of it.
Yeah, by the way, even in this final they just lost, they had a couple of those rounds where they just won like an impossible, just Tech 9 buy or something ridiculous like that, but still fragged everyone. No, here's the sad thing. Vitality actually isn't like super far off, in my opinion, the level in Season 1. You have to remember, almost every other top team except MOUZ basically made a roster move and changed aggressively, mostly in terms of firepower, to try and match up with Vitality. So I think if you look at it, realistically, they could actually have just won these last 3 events in a row. Like this one against FURIA was mega close. The Pro League one, that was an easy one. And then the one against G2, like they almost had that one on the 4th map. Like, so that's one of the differences I also think you have to add in, is even when they were incredibly like visually dominant and statistically dominant in Season 1, they never ever got caught on any of those really close games, though. They would always like steal the victory or pull a crazy comeback out. The difference now is they just don't do that all the time. Like I would say maybe half the time now they just lose that game, or when it's the 11-11 game, the other guy makes the big play or gets the 1v1 last kill that just wins the round. Like it's been fine margins. And then you add in, until like about 3-4 weeks ago, Zemo himself was having a bad start to the season. He was having like a big drop in his numbers. He wasn't as effective. By the way, he looked awesome in this last tournament. Like I thought he looked great in the final. He almost won them the first map. So I have to say, the Vitality one's one of the few ones I don't feel worried about anymore. I think they should go into this major as right now the favourite. I would expect them to win it. And I also look at them and think, bro, who could even beat them before the semis or whatever? Like, they'd have to get a really bad bracket draw. Like, actually, it feels like there's a lot you can bank on with Vitality. Maybe they're not as obvious to win, but I feel like the flaw of the team's right back. I think that's one thing people exaggerate. Actually, remember, dude, they've never had a tournament they've bombed. Like, they've had some they've lost, but they've never really gotten destroyed.
Yeah, I think the only team that really matches them in terms of raw floor output is probably MOUZ. Those are the two teams that are very, very frequent in playoffs and semifinals. I think
it's even a stat that MOUZ made the most semis or something, even though they haven't won anything. Yeah, true.
Yeah, which is tragic in itself, really.
Absolutely.
So as MOUZ, if I had to say to you, okay, so I've gone through sort of like the big talking point teams, if you like, and MOUZ is always sort of sitting in the wings, but it is like that team that never really comes into the conversation. Is that your dark horse? Or is there another lineup that you're going, we shouldn't sleep on this one?
Here's the problem MOUZ has, I think. I think I can make it succinct. They're not the best at anything at all. They don't have the best AWPer. They don't have the best rifler. They don't have the best IGL. They don't have the best map pool. The problem is that this is what's sad. Part of me feels like we should actually give them props. They're a really good team with an incredibly good floor that you actually have to be excellent to beat and win a tournament over. The problem is that's actually really awkward for some reason in esports. We'd hate those teams that are caught in the spot where you don't win, but you're not bad. In a weird way, we'd rather literally even that you were G2 and you won one event and then you were bad at the rest. Somehow, in our brains, that feels more satisfying that you get to one time be at the top. So I feel like the big problem for MOUZ is they're one of the only teams I would almost like bet any amount of money they won't win the tournament. Like, they'll just find a way not to. But I also look at the squad and go, most people are doing their job, though. Like, they're pretty fucking good. So I have to say, I find them a really hard team in that sense, because I feel like we all want every good team to be at least capable of winning the trophy,
This is the thing, like, MOUZ are the vanilla ice cream of Counter-Strike. Every other team, there's a little bit of flavor, there's some little spice, there's something that makes it interesting, and unfortunately, I do agree, we gravitate to extremes more often, not only because it's more exciting that way, but it's also very human. Not everybody's going to be exceptional at everything. The jack of all trades, master of none, but, I think there is definitely an element to MOUZ where they have a couple players that can maybe be that. Xertion, I think, is someone that can be that. I think Spinks is another as well. Torji has always been like a CT specialist, but it's the same way people look at ZywOo. Like, ZywOo is a very, very good player in a lot of areas, but he's not exceptional at really the he's not exceptional at AWPing at like the highest level. His movement isn't always the cleanest either. But he doesn't make mistakes. And I think people almost gravitate to those that find themselves in those types of positions just because it's real, you know, everybody can sort of relate to it.
So, any other teams that you think we should be keeping an eye on and that could potentially be
you know what? It's cursed, but I'll say it. Look, I will say also one thing that actually made. Here's the one downside of the BO5 finals coming to the major. It also makes it less likely that like a G2 or an Aurora or something wins. But I have to say, Aurora deserve to be mentioned. Look, they're another team that has certain critical flaws that absolutely seem like it's kept them from winning. But I think it's so unfair that when people look at all the teams this year, bro, like. I know they don't do it. They consistently don't win. But is there any other teammate that like flatters to deceive, as we say in English, as much as Aurora? Like, again, Aurora has that Falcon things too, where they'll just 2-0 a bunch of really strong teams and smash them out the server. Like, there are games where I look at the Veto, I'm like, this should be like a 2-1 win. Sometimes they just turn up and blow you out the server, mate. And Zantara's drops a plus 30 on your head. Woxic wins 3 clutches. Fucking Jota's like way overqualified to be like, you know, your 4th best player. There's so many upsides to this team. They even, by the way, have a pretty good map pool. True, not a specialist anymore because they don't have the Anubis and the Vertigo, but they're still fucking really good across most map pool, match up with most teams. So I feel like even though to me they're the ultimate of the dark horses, I think you have to give Aurora like the credit that it feels possible. Like I could in my brain run a simulation where if they win the major, it's less of a fluke than like Gambit winning it 8 years ago or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
He doesn't agree.
Well,
it's not agree.
The point. The problem I have with Aurora is just that their T sides are genuinely rough to watch. Like the reason that they are kept afloat and have got their hands on a trophy even is just the idea that these players are clutch. You know, I think Woxic actually might be the best AWPer in the world. He's on Train, especially on Train. Other maps may be up for question, but no, they lean into some of the strengths in their map pool, and they have pieces that can just pull out multi-frags. It is hard to look at Aurora and think, well, they are legitimate contenders. But to be honest, I've even seen like great series out of Major. And if that is your weakest link, and typically is your weakest link, then I shudder to think this team on form going into any tournament. But I think that's why I have to categorize them as a dark horse, because in theory it can all work out, but tactically they are so behind. There's like an absence of team play. You know, when we're looking at the Mongolz and thinking, oh, how long have they been together? They've got so much chemistry. They flash for each other so intuitively. I don't see that at all on Aurora. It's kind of, oh well, my teammates have all taken fights and died over here. I have to do something, and I found a double kill. We're back in the round, boys. that's the way I see Aurora play, unfortunately.
I do also think that contributed to their drop off, because when all the teams had to kind of improve drastically to try and compete with Vitality, it for me, you started to see how many holes Aurora's gameplay actually had. Like, they're really bad when they're bad. Like, when they pop off, it's great, but I just really struggle to watch them when they're not good. And that's a worry for me, is because that's when you need to be better than the rest if you want to, especially if you want to win a major, Thorin. Like, even the struggle at PGL Masters Bucharest, like, that grand final.
Oh, they almost lost. Yeah, absolutely.
It was well, I mean, the whole tournament was rough for them, but that grand final was not, it wasn't pretty. And like, yes, they won, but damn, there was
what I appreciate is I didn't know. Listen, Madja apparently he's like French on some level, Turkish on some level. It turns out he's actually British, because like a truly polite British person, if there's one biscuit left, even if you want it, you're supposed to say no, after you. And it's only if they then turn around like Lexi and go, no, after you first. That's when you then take the biscuit. So finally, he did get that championship victory, but in a very British fashion. No, because that's the bomber. It's like, here's the problem though. That's also in a weird way part of the charm of Aurora. Is because their whole project is it has to be Turkish. You have to be able to speak Turkish. They also just don't have options. Like, it's a bit like the Mongolz one. If Mongolz was an international team, actually you could recover from losing Zenzu. You'd go out there and you'd try and get a Liege or something, some big name fucking player. That's not an option. So the real problem you have right now is they've already made the best roster you can make out of Turkish players, as far as we can tell. Like, you already got the Jota upgrade, which did make you even better. the rest of the squad, those 4 players look really good. Look, I'm a big Magic hater for reasons in the server and out the server, but I don't know who else you can get is the problem. That's the issue, right? Even if you get someone else, they're not going to have any experience. So right now, you sort of painted into a corner. You have to basically just field these 5 players. It's why the joke it really is that everyone's finally caught on to, is they themselves even can see this cycle of like, we hype ourselves up, we look really awesome, we get to a match on paper that because we're hyped up, we should be able to win, we blow it, then Magic does a fucking another little novel. Apparently Longer doesn't exist for him. He just uses Twitter function itself because it has more than the fucking 200 and whatever. He just does a fucking letter to the fans. Sorry, everyone, we sucked again. And then they just Men in Black themselves and repeat the event next one and start out really hot in that one and then Tuesday and then same story. So, but I also feel like you just have to accept that these are the 5 players. Like, I don't really know I've never even heard anyone suggest a different player one. Because remember, they've also tried half the other players in these fucking teams in the past. Like you're not going to cut someone from this team and put X-Floud there. Like, that's not going to happen, is it?
They also tried other pieces in-game leading before. Like, Woxic tried calling for them when they were Eternal Fire. I don't think they ever gave it to Xantar's, but they ushered it around the rest of the roster in hopes that they could find a fit that worked outside of someone like Major, and then they went crawling back to Major, and that seems to have been the best fit. And to be honest, there are moments where in their journey before they did look like they had like good strategies and good execs, but I just don't see that refinement in them at the moment. I don't know if they're just not getting enough practice in, or if their practice isn't feeling good, because to be honest, the tactical side of Counter-Strike is in a little bit of a weird position. I think the most tactically sound team probably is FURIA. With how good their execs can look. But the rest of the squads are just kind of like, well, we're just going to flash in and hope for the best. And we've got the pieces that can do it. So I think part of it's the map pool as well, but the calendar hasn't helped.
So you brought up FURIA, and I was fangirling about them early on, and I figure we might as well end this episode with me fangirling. And it's actually kind of a little bit sad though for me, because the team that's not coming up in this conversation is FaZe. And before every major for the last few years, this is a conversation
2025.
You can never ever count out FaZe. Are we counting out FaZe?
I'm counting the fuck out of FaZe. What are you talking about? I'm already calling it the atomic clock, whatever that like fucking nuclear disaster clock. It's already 12:05 for FaZe. It's over already. Like, the worst thing about FaZe is this, and this is where Kassad also every now and then gets that moment of lucidity in amongst the insanity and the geopolitical ranting, and he will say something really smart if you actually listen. He himself, by the way, last year on our show Hot Take Point Made, had the same take about 5 different variants of it that essentially went, the reason why they already last year should have addressed the whole like one of Carrigan or Rain needs to go is because the mistake of holding on to the core that they had and letting other players go to the vitalities of the world and improve their stock is it now got to the point for FaZe where one roster move doesn't fix the whole team and get you back to number 1. Kassad was right. The reason you needed to be proactive is in an ideal world for FaZe, like we say, it's all you need is one move, and that would also be known by the other players in the scene. They would know, like people like Elise thought they were walking into, like, actually, I'm the missing piece. If I join, I get to win everything. That was the sale of joining FaZe. Right now, the worst thing is they have all these roster issues. They're probably going to have to make some hard decisions about the Jacob guy. Who even knows what happens with Brokey? Like, they feel like you have to strip half the team away to make it really good again. That's the worst part about it. Is like, I actually feel like they're just in no man's land right now. I don't even get the vibe they have any answers right now. I think they're just doing whatever they have to.
FaZe and Na'Vi fall in the same conversation for me, where they are both teams that I actually expect to see great improvements from at this major. I sympathize with FaZe, the last tournament that they were at, the fact that they are CAC before Chengdu, like they have basically very limited runtime with Jacob, with Twist as well. They obviously had to play EPL without him, and then they went straight to China, and they've had maybe a week and a half at best between those events to Chengdu, and it hasn't looked that impressive. But Jacob is also taking on new roles. I think they're also balancing Twists and Carrigan in the calling department, and they still have like an exceptional looking Frozen. Twist is actually putting up some really solid numbers.
Yeah.
As those two riflers, I think there's a lot of capacity for this to still go well for FaZe, and they always seem to get like a buff for the majors. I think that is just a unfortunate truth, I have been down on FaZe actually for a few years now, but then every year it's like, oh, well,
nah, it's not happening. I'll tell you, this is the one where it's not happening. Here's why it's not happening. Brokey never came back. He just had that one good event after they brought him in the line, but everyone forgave him after that because there was bigger problems.
I think
Brokey never made it. He's dead. He's done. All right.
Listen, you don't have to back Brokey, but I think people are too far down on Jacob. Because this is the thing. When FaZe first brought on Brokey, he was a more unproven piece than Jacob was coming into the circuit.
Sure.
You know, Jacob and Hypex, both players that played on that Apogee BetClick team, which, you know, whether or not you see that as like a FaZe nepotism move or what, like they were both very legitimate star pieces on those rosters in a refined tier 2 environment. So if I'm looking at what FaZe have picked up, this is a more proven piece than Brokey ever was, and Jacob has received far more criticism than Brokey ever did.
You are actually calling that not only will FaZe do a run at this major, you're picking Jacob to be one of the players who inspires it. He's going to have a glow up at this major. Is that what you think?
I just think he's not going to be as bad as people say he's going to. Like, everyone's just looking at it, I'm just thinking, man, my Unk FaZe, my Unk Rain can still do that. Why isn't he still in the roster? And it's like, he's been a sore spot for a long, long time. All Jacob has to do is basically be a 1.0 player, and it's an improvement. That's not asking a lot.
It's the way they accidentally, because of that stupid Pro League mix-up, though, did like anti-PR because they made it look like Rain was the solution still.
They were just on like a weird honeymoon run.
It's the worst. It's actually the worst thing that could have happened to that new roster. It's so bad.
I actually asked someone about, I was like, how does this work? Could we bring Rain back for the major? And they were like, no, Sam, we can't. I was like, but they could. Like, we've gone over time, but I do have to. The thing that I couldn't actually let go is that Yumi, you said that you think Na'Vi, we shouldn't sleep on them. I think Na'Vi's a dead roster walking, but you think that they could actually have a deeper run at the major?
Like, it's a last chance saloon type event. Like,
I think it's the last chance. It's gone. I think the chances are gone. I think that team is. They just look so sad.
Yeah. But this way, if you tell me Na'Vi has a bright future, I assume you've accidentally just taken too much of the fucking, and then you're looking through a kaleidoscope, mate. That's not real. That's fake.
They are just simply the teams. They're simply the teams I think could be far better than the season is reflected. That's all I'm saying.
What is that? How vague is that? What political answer is that?
Listen, Blade and Alexi are still decent. Okay. Like they can still make something work. Mikaze isn't like he's not a bad player. That's true. People have to remember that he's not a bad player.
No, he's fine actually. He's been
legitimately
good.
Wonderful is not as bad as people make. Like people always like to dog on Wonderful for reasons unbeknownst to me because he's actually fine. He's not the greatest. He's not elite,
I'll give you an olive branch. If I am as optimistic as possible for Na'Vi, I don't think it's impossible. For example, they could make like the semis, but I don't think they can win the major. Bro. I don't think it's even possible.
Yeah.
You?
I mean, it's only those first 3 or 4 that we talked about that legitimately I think should win the major.
There we go. You can tell us who you think's going to win the major, and if you disagree with us, you can let us know in the comments, and we'll be back soon for another episode.